Alright, Jammer here with a review of the Raiden Project for the original PlayStation, a title which presents two similar and well-built, vertically scrolling spaceship shooters from early 90s arcade cabinets, Raiden 1 and Raiden 2, all on one disc. And from what I've gathered, these titles are the same as what you'd find in their original arcade form, albeit formatted with your typical compilation options. You can change the size of the screen, its orientation, the game's difficulty, and whether original or remixed music is played. It's well presented and delivered, though some button indications on the menu screen would have been nice. Not a big deal though. The games themselves contain pretty typical weapon systems and storylines. Aliens are attacking, and Earth's only hope is to defend itself and strike back with the eponymous super spacecraft. In Raiden you have two weapon types, a red spread shot and a blue laser beam, each of which must be improved by collecting similarly colored floating power-ups, or else the weapon is switched without a gain in strength. Supplemental weapons include green homing missiles and yellow, more powerful missiles that fire upwards. Also in the player's arsenal is a powerful bomb that is useful for nullifying enemy bullets. Raiden 2 adds a couple new weapons, the purple plasma weapon and the cluster bombs. The plasma weapon is another option besides the spread shot and the laser weapons, and once it's charged, it locks onto the nearest enemy, though the player's movement can affect the plasma beam's trajectory even as it's locked on. The cluster bombs are the player 2 default bombs, and while they seem less powerful, they are more useful for negating enemy bullets. Beyond these, collectibles tend to be for score, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to change the fighter's speed. All these sorts of power-ups and mechanics are fairly common in spaceship shooters by this point. Nevertheless, I would say the features that separate Raiden 1 and 2 from other spaceship shooters are their focus on positioning and the overall polish of the titles. Now, I wouldn't say the Raiden spacecraft is slow per se, but on the default and higher difficulties, enemy bullets fire way too fast for the player to respond to, unless the player keeps some distance from the enemy. Where this gets interesting is when risk versus reward comes into play. Since the weapon's power-ups fly slowly in a circle in the center of the screen and flash between specific power-ups, it's quite dangerous to actually risk your ship to go out and collect the power-ups, all while getting the specific one that you want and avoiding enemy fire. So, do you risk getting out of position to get better weapons and maybe stand a better chance, and of course get a better score in the process? Or do you play it safe and maybe last a little bit longer than you would otherwise? Now, as I mentioned, what also sets these titles apart is their polish. Sprites, animations, and effects all look terrific, and far beyond anything the consoles at the time could handle. Raiden 2 came out in arcades in about '93. There's no way the SNES or the Genesis could have run these games. Raiden 2 in particular is impressive for its enemy explosions, especially when enemy debris scatters all across the screen. Raiden 2 in general has a lot more going on than its predecessor, and I would argue that it is a much more difficult game because of it. And it may be the main driving reason for seeking the Raiden Project out as well, since it appears that Raiden 2 is a much more difficult game to come by nowadays. So if you're looking for a sound, solidly produced spaceship shooter, the Raiden Project is a pretty good value since you're getting not one, but two good games. However, if you're more interested in a shooter with more original mechanics or gimmicks, well, you might want to look elsewhere. I will end by saying that the sprite work in these titles, particularly in Raiden 2, is a highlight for me, and these games look really nice upscaled to high definition on the PlayStation 3. Well, have a good one.